This is day 1585 of the Arukh HaShulchan Yomi. Today's Arukh HaShulchan Yomi is sponsored Li Nishmas Rabbi Eliezer ben Yosef HaKohen, Rabbi Eliezer Cohen, whose yahrzeit is this week. Rabbi Cohen was one of the major rabbeim of my wife in high school in Detroit, and also one of the rabbonim who was a role model and a posek for the Schreiber family, my in-laws, Aleim Shalom, and Lahavdil ben Chaim L'Chaim, my brother-in-law and sisters-in-law, growing up in Detroit. And he had a tremendous hashpah on thousands of Talmidim and Talmidos, and his neshama should have an aliyah. Today we're doing Yeridea, Siman Shin Chav Dalid, Sifir Aleph to Yud Zayin. Rav. These five types of grain joined together to make the shear of Chalashim and Beis and Chamish's Vayim. Chamishim Mitzarfas only has 5/4 of these five grains. They join together. But we mentioned many of them: wheat, barley, spelt, rye, and oats. When it's true, when you mix them as a flour and knead them together. If you we've announced where even knead each one separately, but then you knead it all together. Still became one dough. But if you kneaded each one separately, and there's no shear unless you join them all together, and you connect. Literally glue one dough to the other, but katzvo same on their edges. Tibu koshu with just a symbolic type of connection. Koshu oshanosim sal echad, or if you put in one basket, she's by sim chafei, which is an eight. So we're going to talk about what you get sim chafei. Mitzdarfa zuluzu osin shmin echad. Then those are the same type joined together. Avo mishnei minim em mitzdarfos lo b'nishu, but the two minim don't join together. Lo b'nishu, not even if they're biting, which is a stronger for a connection. Lo b'tziu of sal, nor even if they are joined together by the basket. They must be kneaded together. You basically me and mao mean b'mino. What does mean b'mino? It's a bit complicated. Hachidim em mitzdarfos ela im ha kusmin. Chitim only joined together with kusmin, which I call correctly is spelt. Because spelt is a type of wheat type, also type of barley. Kusmin joined together with each each of them, all of them, each one of them. And barley joins together with everything except with wheat. The chiffon, which is rye, with barley, kusmin and spelt, not with oatmeal and with oat and with chitim and wheat. And wheat oat, kusmin joins together with barley and with spelt, and not with wheat and with rye. But Rambam Pasuk the Kusmin Shiva Shuvim Starfin says that Rambam Pasuk that spelt and oat and rye joined together. The bracket says here the Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri's Tefillah came in Mishnah Perek Davish base because Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri holds this way. His Tefillah the Rambam lo Poli Tanakama and the Rambam holds he not arguing Tanakama came before Bakmara. Seems to be a case where Psalachim Daf Laminei Yishbul Shol V'Shifon that oats and rye means orinane. They are type of barley with name, and they are equal. Duke. Obviously, very complicated. There's a question, but Shumas then we learn Shumas base. Kosher be kilayim, kosher be kilayim b'chaber lo yichol mizel zeh. Anything which is kilayim with something else, you should not make truma for take truma for one or the other. And wheat and spelt are kilayim. And so do barley and spelt. And so do barley and rye. Like it says, it says kilayim. Why is truma then chal when it bites? The doughs bite each other. You can set aside from one or the other, but they're not kneaded together. Yushalmi says because the physical appearance of the doughs is similar to each other. Tosis means Hamanachas Davain. For the came a day bechol echad kashir also since each one is less than shir. Shapir osa hanishu chios and achas. The biting makes them one. Amlim be'emes yesh shir chala b'zeh shir chala b'zeh. But if taka each one has only independent shir chala, be'emes emet stari. If taka doesn't join together, in shafish misel zeh. That they should be able to separate from the other kosher and kilayim as long as each one is kilayim in the other one. Therefore, chitim don't join together with any one of them. We don't can't separate from chitim on them. Lo mehen chitim not for them chitim. Kusin shifa marfishim zeh. Kusin shifa you can the spelt and the rye you can separate from each other. Chen shiva shua b'tzorim so from oats and barley marfishim zeh. Chen pas katuv shirach si base. Achas yeshir shir achas einba. And if one has the shir and one does not have the shir, mitzvah kamo b'shem shteim shir. They join together as if they both don't have a shir. You start for l'chacham mina pachas mikashir, and this is actually in the brackets, but it's brackets without the Rashi print. I have to assume that's a typo. It's supposed to be in Rashi print, I assume. Mina. And then in terms of you're going to join afterwards from the same mean, pachas mikashir. Less than a shear, loti tzai im zushak for niftar can join together that which is already exempted. Apiyah frashim isa sheish b'kashir based on setting aside from the dough which had a shear. In other words, you can afterwards go back. Well, it's taken off challah. It's taken off challah, obviously. That's a taz. Really, the average else is kashir. It seems to me says Arukh HaShulchan to take off from the one which has the kashir. If Torah says she'ein b'kashir and exempt that which does not have the shir. Avlefish mizu she'ein b'kashir, which not set aside from one which does not have a shir. If Torah says she'ein b'kashir to exempt that which does not have the shir, that one which does have the shir. The game which since he doesn't need it. The larger dough. Only for it's not exempted by the taking off from the one which doesn't have the proper measure. If they're biting each other. If not, they have no connection to each other. If you mix a measure from one dough with a measure of another dough which is not its type, and you divide them afterwards, and you add it on, then afterwards each one it's a kav of its type. Chai b'chala. It's chai b'chala. This is right together when they're mixed. And we have kav kemach mean acher al das l'chalko. But that if you mix together a kav of flour with a kav of flour, a different with the assumption go divide up. Then you add it on each one. A rova hakav of its own mean. Potter akan l'shono. You exempt. That's the end quote from the remote. What does he mean? Bered varv. It means like as follows. The kam is siman shin chavav. Later on, it's siman shin chavav. In the vav, these parts going to come clear. The babais echad. A certain one person. Shalosh chamesha servoim shamanas l'chalko. If he mixes together 5 quarters on the with the assumption, with the condition that he's going to divide them up. Chai v'chala, it's chai v'chala. L'mayim asher b'tayt l'chalko. In fact, he doesn't want to divide up. Doesn't take away the chiyuv. And since we learned previously that if you need all the types together, they are mitzvah. But if you do not need them together, but you brought them together by biting, only joins together each species in its corresponding species. According to the complex parameters which we described. Therefore it says mix together a measure of a dough with another measure. In other words, you needed a measure of chitim by itself. And a measure of surim by itself. Each one doesn't have the measure of challah. Even if you mix them not by actually mixing the doughs, but by biting. And then you divide them afterwards. And you add then a measure of the measure of wheat to the wheat. The nasa chamesha zervoim, so it became the proper measure of challah. And a measure of the barley, so it became the proper measure of challah. They didn't become exempt when they were biting each other. But we mixed a measure of flour flour with a measure of flour from a different type, and you then kneaded them together. She's chai b'challah. They became chai b'challah. Therefore, if you buy afterwards, so see a rova. I add each one a rova. It's potter. The kabin kvar is chayvu, because the kavin themselves are already obligated. Nishara to rak rova koechot. So now you're left. They became chayv as a corporate entity, and now you're left with just a rova attached of each one. Rova en bashir challah, and a rova does not measure challah. Pashutu, but here comes the punchline. The myrik shehifresh challah mikodim. It's got to be a set aside challah from the larger dough. Otherwise, this whole halacha makes no sense. Because otherwise, you still have the obligation. But in the first case, I feel he free. Shemi set aside. Lav klumu. It was meaningless. Came Shemi Stipend says that because it weren't mitzvah to begin with. It's a very convoluted way of putting it, but that's the way it goes. And the brackets he says that sources in Russian Torah, there's an explanation in Russian Torah. In the first case, you took off challah. In the case of the doughs, took a challah. In the case of the flour, you did not take off the challah. Okay. I'm sorry, that's not what I meant to say. The case where you're potter later on is a case where you took off the challah. Sorry, I messed up. Okay, so that's what he said before. That's my way to free of challah mikodim. Not the doughs is the case where you didn't take off the challah because you couldn't take off the challah. And the flour is the case where you could take off the challah, and had to take off the challah, therefore you did take off the challah. So it's not explicit Ramah these things, but the Arukh HaShulchan makes it clear. Otherwise, the halacha doesn't make any sense. Five quarters of chayim. Usorim and their sourdough, v'subam and their bran, umursanon and their mursan. I forgot the gene subin mursan. Yeah, subin is bran and mursan are husks. Five reviim are chayim. Nita mursanim. We tell them the husks are taken out because of teichon, and you put them back afterwards. Are able to turn. Then it remains potter because it's only when it was mixed initially. Ayin sham. Fresh shas operas on the Shabbos. More explains at the end of the seventh paragraph of Shabbos. Ayin vav shkein ani ochel pito meisa blusa. A poor person eats his dough mixed up with all the impurities. Even though an usher only eats his bread when the bran and husks are removed, the poor person eats it. Once it's taken out, it's not normal to put it back. Sorry, says as if you put it in dirt. But it's not included in the reckoning. They put like World War II, and they put sawdust in the bread, not be included. Subin is the thin bran, and Mursan Huav, it's the thick husks. It's really the same thing basically, but it's a question of how thick it is and how thin and thick it is. Tesai, the Chor Masha Milosha Misha Dafka Mursan Shita B'Chazat Tochen Mitzarv. And only the husk, when you move it, doesn't join up. Assuming not the bran. Look, if that's case, not the case, why I say then Mursan is taken out and put it back as bottle. They say Subin. Match the bran. No Mursan. If a bran which is moved and put out back doesn't join up to the shear, certainly Mursan. The Torah did write both Subin and Mursan. Language Rambam is a little bit strange because of kamach shelo rakdo, flour which is not sifted. You need it with its bran. However, yeshlo kamach omer. Once you have in the entire flour the measure of challah chay b'challah. Amnilta mursa min kamach. You start with subin, now we change the mursan, and the mursan is taken from the cow's flour. And then you put it back to make up the measure of the flour, the dough. By putting back flour, it's not chayv b'challah. Pata b'subin b'sir b'mursan. Starts with subin and ends with mursan. Sham is filei katuah kol echad. It seems that he holds everything is the same. If he's a kashal Hashem Mishnah, but according to this language, Mishnah is difficult. B'tzarchim. Shon leaves it difficult. And what's the distinction between bran and husks? The bracket says, "Vulaya Mishnah Hachibarusha." Perhaps this is Pshat Mishnah. Avshel Suban Nishmar Kemach. Even though the bran remains in the flour, nevertheless, if you put back the husks, it doesn't work. You took the bran, Vermursen, and the husks. Nisha, you took the bran, Vermursen, Nisha, and the husks remain. And then you put the subin back. It's tarif. Okay. It's not clear. It's obvious if you put the musan back, but you also made the flour, added flour. Make the shir chala, it's chayav v'chei mashal Rambam beduk. Okay. This partial it seems. You say Rosh writes lichayra. I near it seemed that the Rameshchem Yidraim Yeshma Dam Betzua Lo Bekemach. 5 questions measured in the grain, not in the flour. Vum Dam Isas Midbar Yafina, because only for the flour in the midbar, the dough in the midbar. Yafina Lava Shama Yumalaktim over, then they gathered it over as grain. As one, so one grain. And then they ground it in the mill. That women pile up flour for the shir challah. That the flour of volume, I guess the goat chose means that they overfilled it. More than necessary if it be grain, and because he says, assume because the volume of flour is larger than the volume of grain, so therefore to get the grain of 5 fourths, you need to have actually more flour. In other words, you need 5 revoim of grain, which would be more than 5 for a volume of flour. So the Torah wrote, you measure according to the grain, not according to the flour. Let's say you have to pile up the flour in the measure. Everybody checks the base. The back the Prisha. The Rosh may say the Lokin, the Rosh himself says that's not the Messiah from Rabbi. And this question already rashed to the Rashba. I guess it sounds like the Rosh asked the Rashba this question. I know they were precise contemporaries in that respect. Respond to him, you'll never know the precise measure. How would we know how much the man would increase when it was ground? The Torah said the shear of the Omer, and not the shear of flour, which comes from 5 revoim of grain. You can't know. Therefore, you just have to go by flour at 5 revoim. That's why the distinction between grain and flour is not mentioned in the Shulchan Aruch.